Samm Marshall shares uplifting stories and conversations with people making Johannesburg and the world a better place.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. And today on the show, we're joined by Juanita Foster, who is an independent business advisor, keynote speaker, and author of a powerful recent article that's shaking up traditional thinking on leadership. And it's titled, "Empowerment Without Support is a Leadership Illusion." Juanita wants us to challenge the common assumption that simply delegating responsibility equals true empowerment. She argues that without structure, authority, and tools, delegation can become a disempowerment in disguise. Juanita, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
What a powerful way to think about leadership, right? To think about what true leadership is. And then you're saying there's an illusion to leadership.
The illusion comes from, I've said something. We mention it in a meeting. And sometimes I've thought something and I hope people could read my mind. We've been working together long enough. And what I found in my own leadership journey and working with leaders and sitting on boards and so on is that phrase has been used so many times. And it comes in variations. We need to, someone must, we highlighted it.
Yeah.
We need to consider it. It's these vague statements, and the leaders go away and they said, well, I've communicated. I have told the team what needs to be done. I have shared my vision. And they get very frustrated that 3-4 weeks afterwards, the exact same thing lands up on their desk because people haven't done the thing. And when you talk to the leaders, they are frustrated about one thing. And when you talk to the team who's supposed to implement, they are very surprised that the responsibility was theirs because they have not been properly empowered or properly equipped to get this thing done.
A lot to unpack there, but the one thing that strikes out in me is the idea that there's this perception that a leader thinks that they are leading well, and that when you're speaking to the staff, they're going, oh, I didn't know that we were empowered to do that. Is the disconnect because, and look, I must admit, I know a fair amount of leaders that run organizations. We interview them. Their hearts are in a good place. I haven't met many that go, it's my way or the highway. You know, they don't publicly state it. But just as an expert, when you do the kind of analysis and you kind of lift up the layers, what is it? Is it a leader who is out of touch, or is it an organization that, because the organization is so monolithic, whether the leadership is there or not, the foundation of how you operate as a leader is in place, so we'll just swap one in for the other? What is it?
Very loaded question, and we can be here for days debating it. But it's also a very complex issue, and it moves on a spectrum.
Yeah.
Depending on size of company, depending on company culture, depending on type of employees you have, depending on levels of qualification and so on. But let's talk to the leadership side of it, not to the employee side of it for now. It is the easiest thing, once you're a leader, to be consumed by that power, even if you don't realize it. It's like that analogy of, putting a frog in boiling water, the frog will jump out. Leave the frog or put the frog in cold water, leave it to boil. What will happen? The frog will have a nice jacuzzi. And it happens to all of us in leadership if we don't check ourselves. Now, I've got a rule that says if we isn't somebody, we is nobody. If I, Juanita, don't check myself, whether I have communicated properly, whether I have checked my own understanding, whether I have empowered, whether I have equipped, whether people aren't just saying yes to avoid a mood, whether people aren't just saying yes to get on with it.
I get a sense that happens a lot more.
It does.
Leaders come in and people are just trying to placate and make sure that the leader is, and they manage him. They manage his expectations, they manage who he is, but they don't deal with the style or what the role is.
Because what then happens when they try to deal with the style? They have to manage their own risk, right? So in that type of company, that type of culture where you can't tell the leader that was over the line, what do? You manage the best you can with what you have. And you try to not get fired. And that then translates into a company culture of everybody trying to not get fired instead of everybody working towards a shared purpose and a shared vision where everybody knows if they tell the leader, I'm sorry, you overstepped, or you might actually be wrong. The leader's first response and only acceptable response is thank you. Share more with me. As a leader, it's incredibly easy to believe your own ego because,
to drink your own Kool-Aid.
There you go, drink your own, because we're on TV, we're on radio, we're so amazing. It's super easy.
I'm jumping the gun here a little bit because there's a process that I want to follow. But on the back of what you're saying, leadership styles currently, they seem to be very public. And I'll give you an example, an Elon Musk. He comes across as... I've read the reports, I've seen interviews with people that have worked at SpaceX and the companies. He has a very strong opinion of what's going to happen. He has only allocated X amount of time for meetings, which means that he doesn't have time to faff around. He's coming in, he comes out. He's the kind of leader, if he sleeps under the desk, he expects his staff to sleep under the desk. You have that kind of leadership. Then you have, just my very from a very observational view, you're the expert. Then you have, for example, a Trump leader. Then you have a kind of a Joe Biden leader. You've got to have a Cyril Ramaphosa leader. You've got a Greg Solomons is there, McDonald's leadership. And leadership at the moment feels to me like it's become a new celebrity cult thing, right? And I don't know how you see leadership currently play out the way it is, because we have a president that, not us, but we have an American president who fires people publicly. So I don't know what your viewpoint is on the leadership at the moment being very public.
I'm loving your question so much. Let's separate the words a little bit in this word salad of leadership and management and owner and founder and person. So is Elon Musk's leadership style the same as his personality, the same as his management style, the same as...
I would argue it is.
That's the thing. So what prevents a leader from being one personality type and understanding in my role as this leader of this group, this team, this project, this family, this group work in school, this massive organization? My role is to adopt the following behaviors for the greater benefit of the team and the task, irrespective of my personality. If I, as an appointed leader or a self-elected leader, then say my personality and my leadership style has to be the same, that's just how it is. Me personally, I see a problem with it.
And is that under the idea I've got to be authentic to myself?
Look, authenticity has got
that word, right?
the authentic.
That word is part of the salad now.
The authentic as a person, yes, you are you. Leadership is a skill.
So you're saying, and I want to understand this,
Yes.
and I want to listen, it's not the same thing.
No.
You have to separate.
Yes.
Who you are at home and who you are at work is not the same thing.
They can be the same thing. They don't have to be, and they shouldn't always be. Your leadership style, for example, changes per situation. You might be the most laid-back leader. You never micromanage. You have all things. You trust your team until a crisis hits. You have to change your leadership style, not who you are as a person. Who you are as a person, that's consistent. Your leadership style in that moment then
who you
dictates.
are as a person is consistent.
Yep.
But what the roles dictate is the
Leadership
tools
style,
that choose.
management skills, all of those things, yes.
Clarity. And people argue that a person like Elon Musk is clear, right? He's clear about what he wants. But you're arguing that clarity is a superpower for a leader.
Clarity is based on perception. What might be clear for me isn't clear for my 13-year-old daughter.
Yes, 100%.
Very obviously. What might be clear for me is based in my expectations.
But it is a game changer.
Oh, yes, absolutely. The moment you invest time and effort in making things clear, not for yourself, for others. Same message, different tricks, tools needed at boardroom level, at shareholder level, at stakeholder level, at employee level, different levels of employee. If you have a message that you need to communicate and you are in the privileged position of being a leader, it's up to you to repackage that message so that it makes sense for the people who you are sending that message to. It is not up to them to come to your understanding.
So that means that if you are the leader, and if you look at our demographic where we are based, the the disposable income of this radio station in terms of its listeners is 8.5 billion rand a month. So that tells you that there's a fair amount of business owners at different scales. Are you saying to me that whether you are a leader in an organization that's 15 strong, 50 strong, 100 strong, 1,000 strong, that the job of clarity is your job?
Yeah.
And not the person receiving it?
I do. That is absolutely my opinion, yes.
Because if we understand what clarity means, so what skill set would you need to be able to embrace this idea that I have to, that clarity for me could be a game changer?
Self-awareness. We have to know ourselves way more than our egos want to.
Okay.
Self-awareness. Actual communication skills in various formats. Being able to repackage message, use different words, use different analogies, not things that make you feel comfortable, not things that save you time, not things that save you effort. More information is usually not the answer. More information does not equal more influence. It usually needs context. And you as the sender of the message, you as the leader, needs to then repackage that message and say, up to me to know myself, where I tend to get too excited, talk too fast, and then people don't understand me. Change my communication style, the repackaging, etc., etc. And then know other people. Actually, before you go in and say, these are my ideas, there we go for it. I have empowered you, you figure out the equipment, and I'm very surprised about why these things haven't worked. Have I understood who I'm talking to? Have I understood how they are influenced? Have I understood the barriers between us that is causing misunderstanding? Not because people have ill intent, not because people don't want to do what I want them to do, because they generally, truly just miss one piece of the puzzle. And if I, as leader, can clear up that piece, the other side of that effort, that investment, that giving up of self is incredibly freeing.
Jonita, another term that you throw in your article, and I would encourage people to go and read it, it's called Empowerment Without Support is a Leadership Illusion, right? We'll tell people where to go and find it. But one of the things you talk about, and something that I'm not familiar, I understand it, but I'm hoping that maybe it's not as basic as I think it is the idea of implied authority. What is implied authority?
Implied authority is, if I give a responsibility to someone, there's an implied authority that goes with it. But implied authority is simply implied. It is not informed. So say, for example, I tell one department head to go and get things done. In that task they need to perform, they need to communicate with other departments, perhaps outside of the scope they usually do. If that authority is just implied, expected from me as leader, I have given you this and I'm assuming that others will understand by giving this person this task. They also have the authority that goes with it. That is implied. We need to make sure that if that
The
person
rest of the
is,
value chain
yes, there you go,
understands.
they are instructed to move outside of scope or to get things done, that we pave the way for them, send out a note to all the other departments, I have given this person this task. That implies that for this project, they are going to move outside of scope. Please support them.
Because one would assume then if that is the case, and you as the leader, and let's maybe bring it down to a mom and pop business. If you say, Sam, go and secure this, do that. If you of the leader have not taken the time to facilitate that process, it causes friction between myself and my colleague, especially in environments where I don't have that authority. Because I'm
Absolutely.
not always going to hold that position.
But now, Sam, I can hear the leaders listening to us say, yes, but that is their job. Why am I being paid? Why am I paying them if they can't get it done? So here's the thing. Do you want people to get things done? Or do you want people to spend their time, energy, effort to try and get a million things done? Yes, that's what they paid for. But if we pave the way for them to get it done quicker, sooner, then that's our job's done. Then we've led. Then we've paved the way for the task to happen.
Is the challenge also, and I think it's an important question to ask, because I think this happens more often than what we as ordinary. You probably see it a lot more because this is your expertise. But your example is the CEO who delegates authority but keeps control. And some will go and say, but that's not a bad thing. I mean, CEOs need to keep control.
CEOs need to keep control of what? Of personal preferences, of the way things have always been done, of the way others are doing things, of the way... What do CEOs actually need to keep control of? Everything, or that the purpose, the vision, the mission of the company, organization, mom and pop shop is being reached. So let's shift our control then. If you are in control, then control the things that are going to prevent the ultimate outcome from being met. Don't control the way people do things just because you have a strong personal preference.
Okay. Because the argument would then be that if it does go pear-shaped, that if Sam is too worried about Tim and how Tim would react, that it doesn't allow me to flourish in my expertise, but what I'm really trying to do is appease to you, and I'm going to get in trouble either way.
Absolutely. And then my question for the leader is Tim the right person? And now, Tim is here in studio, so this is making an awkward conversation. But my question is then, if you can't trust your people and leave your people after you've empowered and equipped them, which is the basis of the argument, then do you have the right people? And sometimes you might have the right people, but in the wrong roles. Something needs to shift. Otherwise, very often, if you can't leave your people, if you can't, and this usually happens in small organizations, if you can't leave your people, if you can't trust your people, start with yourself as leader. Did I empower? Did I equip? Was there clarity? And if all of those boxes are checked, did I check in with them, whether they also share my conviction? This is clear. And then start saying, do I have the right people on board for where this business is going now?
But and I would argue that probably loads of leaders think like that anyway, right? They ask themselves constantly, do I have the right people, don't I? But I think the other thing that you've asked in the article is, and it's not what you asked specifically, but I think in the way you're communicating, I think the question is, how do you start as a leader to recognize, one, that you might not have the right people, two, that you might be too controlling? Because I think you can only help somebody if they recognize they've got a problem or a challenge. So what do you, if you're sitting in the car, you're a leader, you're a CEO, whatever, what are the 1, 2, 3 questions you have to ask yourself around because all of it still at the heart of it is the leader, right? So whether you have the right people or not, it's questions about whether you have hired the right people. And whether you're holding on too tightly, it's about your management style. So what would you list, whether it's 1, 2, 3 questions that you have to ask yourself often or regularly?
Start with asking yourself, am I okay now in asking these questions with being very, very honest with myself? And if you are, then ask yourself, for how long have I been trying to get this business to a certain place in a certain way? How long? And then be honest with how long really. And then start saying, well, where might the gap have been? What have I tried as leader? And if I've tried everything that is my capability, maybe then let's look at the team. And also understand that your 9s and 10s, your top scorers of your business, might be someone else's 5s and 6. 9s and 10s, the best people possible, aren't necessarily the most expensive people, the most qualified people, the most experienced people, people that are the best fit for what your business is supposed to achieve. So how long am I going to be honest with myself? How long have I been trying to get this project, task, group, business thing going in certain direction? Have I tried everything I possibly can and then more? Has the team really? And then where's the gap? If you haven't, as a leader, tried everything you can, including reducing your ego, including communication, including saying sorry, including all of these things, and that might take a year because, when we've drunk our own Kool-Aid,
for a long time,
we've got a whole lot of things to get rid of. Then when you're done with that, and you start saying, well, I really like this person the most, but this person has performed the least. It's time for some tough discussions.
And I can imagine there's a process for that.
Please follow the process always.
Yeah.
Always.
Or else you find yourself in trouble. The big ask is empowerment without support. And one would logically, I mean, you're the expert, but one would logically think that if you say, well, guys, we're here to empower you, that, and I'm thinking back to my own very, very limited corporate experience, where people will talk empowerment, but they don't tell you how or why. Like, and I don't know if you come across that often. They'll say the words.
Yeah.
But they might not have set up the structures for somebody to be able to go through that.
Think of a meeting that you attend.
Yeah.
Most people attend meetings in some sort of fashion.
Yeah,
You've
often.
had an hour-long meeting. There was an agenda. Many people talked. At the end, can you extrapolate what was supposed to be done? If you can, if there are action items, on each action item, is there a person assigned to say, this person is responsible for it? And has someone checked that that person can actually achieve it with the tools, with the equipment, with the training and so on? So that is the big ask. Let's stop delegating to people, calling it delegation, but actually just dumping our responsibilities, dumping our half-baked ideas, dumping our unfair expectations because we haven't wanted to check as leaders. And let's start equipping people, asking, how will they make this happen? Asking yourself, if I was in their shoes, what would I have wanted to make it happen? And did I check that they have the exact same thing? And if they don't, it's up to me as leader, because I am leading this entire thing that is the company. I need to make sure that they know the gaps and that they are equipped to fill those gaps.
Something else that I've also experienced, I'm not going to out anybody, but sometimes there will be handovers. A new captain comes in. Obviously, a new broom sweeps differently.
Yep.
And obviously, you can see some leaderships, they hold some stuff very dear, others not so much. And so you'll find that the company will outwardly look the same to you as the consumer, but inside, when you speak to the staff, they'll go, well, this guy was more people orientated, this one cares more about operational stuff. And so it swings between whoever the new leader is, right? And one of the other things in your article that you talk about is structural problems. And sometimes it gets masked as performance issues, when in actual fact, leaderships are different. They're not the same, right? How do you do a structure audit? How do you make sure that, look, it's always the case. New leader will surround themselves with the kind of people that they feel drive their values, all of that stuff. And in some instances, it will add to the overall turnover of an organization at the cost of the kind of the internal value of people that work there, where that leader is more about profit than the other one is more about people. How do you do a structural audit? How do you make sure that whether you are a new leader, whether you are one that's been there for 10, 20, 30 years or whatever it may be, that we don't misdiagnose performance versus structure?
It depends on what your mandate is given to you by the board or shareholders and so on. So it brings us back to the previous conversation of the rise of the celebrity leader, and the focus of the first 100 days.
Yes, it's a huge
thing. So if you
thing.
have a massive bonus riding on the first 100 days, or massive contract riding on the first 100 days.
Do you come across that a lot now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Can you afford to go in soft, slow, gentle, build for change, prepare for change, and comfort people? Or frankly, are you, because you're an appointed leader, remember here what we are talking about, appointed employed leaders, less the owners of the company, you are going to be focused on performance at all costs. If your mandate is balanced, thank goodness for boards that do that, then you do have a little bit more time. If you've been there for 10 years, everybody's very happy with you, you can do no wrong. Get up off our golden thrones a little bit, dust off the techies and the pluckies, and go spend 1 week, is completely irrelevant, but 1 day per department. Not as an undercover CEO, that whole
that show.
Not that. Because the moment you put yourself in someone else's shoes, it really is as simple as that. Put your bum in someone else's chair. Put your feet in someone else's shoes. You might start seeing things that you didn't know, because by the time it gets to you in a nice, pretty report, and other people are protecting their jobs and their responsibilities, or they just want to get rid of you and your behaviors, you do not know the truth. If you can spend time on reception and see our phone systems are falling apart, or people are never reachable and so on, that gives you a to-do list. If you go and spend time on the factory floor saying, I cannot work an 8-hour shift with these bathroom breaks, maybe change that. You won't know if you don't check. And yes, it's a luxury because it's all about performance. But then start where the mandate starts. If your mandate is profit, 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 profit at any cost, and you want to change that, then challenge the board at the risk of your own job and say, where's the balance? Could we have 1% focus on? Could we start making small changes? Could I spend a day in or outside of boardrooms and in one of these things and start changing things from the bottom up? And sometimes just arrive early or stay late and talk to the cleaners. They know.
We're wrapping up this conversation, but one of the things that's becoming quite evident in organizations is that, so there's two scenarios, both small and medium, and I just want to get your take on this. From within an organization, big organization, you have a CFO who's promoted to CEO. The one job is very different to the other.
I agree.
Right? And so this is more operationally focused. That's kind of human-centric driven in terms of its business. Still both about profit, but the scales are different. So you have that person being promoted internally. He's now gone from kind of being the 2IC or down the value chain to the prominent person. So there needs to be a massive shift in the thinking because they have different functions. Then you have, for example, a mom and pop business. And when I mean mom and pop, I don't mean as in kind of a tuck shop. I mean, it's a business, it employs 100, 200 people.
Yeah.
But the son and the daughter's next in line to take over. And their management style is very different to the parents. But they're now stepping in. Some of the staff have been there from the early days. And then you see dynamics that are really causes massive issues. How do you speak to those two issues? And I'm actually seeing that happen where a son will come in, he's gone to business school, the parents started because they were just really good entrepreneurs, but they don't have the educational understanding of the son. And so it causes friction within the company. How do you look at those two?
Who is the leader? So if the CFO, COO, CMO, whoever steps into CEO role, they are not the leader in that space. They're appointers, the board. They are the leaders. Then the board as leaders should ask themselves, have we empowered and equipped this person so that they, in their leadership role, downwards, can equip and empower? From a family business point of view, the same thing. If you are handing over to the next generation, but you're holding on as leader, then it's still your responsibility to empower and equip. Until you step away and hand over the leadership reins, truly hand over the leadership reins, then the new leader can be expected to empower and equip. But until you have not been handed over the empower and equip reins by the leader,
it'll stay an illusion.
It'll stay an illusion.
Okay, that's where we leave it. Jonita, very quickly, where can people find your articles? I know you're active on LinkedIn.
Yes, it is very, very brand new, so it's not even on my website yet, but later today I'll pop it onto my website. It might be on yours as well, but just give it a few hours and it will pop up somewhere on Google.
Yeah. And so where can people get hold of you? Where can they, what website, email, all of that?
Juanita Forster, VORSTER.com. It's all there.
Simple as that. Juanita Forster, thank you very much for talking to us. It's it's an article about empowerment without support and whether that is a leadership illusion. And she writes about that. And she argues that without structure, authority, and tools, delegation can become disempowerment in disguise. So it's something we all have to think about. It's some thought-provoking stuff on the Social Impact Show. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
919 FM. Your